What's up, guys? Christian Brindle here, and today I wanted to bring you a video that is exclusive from my university for Medicare insurance agents, Six-Figure Medicare University. This is actually a live training call that I did in the past week for my university members and for our contracted agents, all about calling leads and all about how to get in touch with people better, how to conduct yourself on the phone, how to get right to the point, and how to just get much farther with your leads when you're actually making calls, and also how to do a proper presentation and how to do a presentation without losing them and losing them up in the clouds, right? This was a very high level and very in-depth sales training. Usually to get this kind of training and this kind of in-depth conversation, you have to be a member of Six-Figure Medicare University. I'm giving it to you, my YouTube audience, for free here today. And it's just a preview of what you can expect in trainings like it in Six-Figure Medicare University. If you would like to get into Six-Figure Medicare University, you can do it for either $50 a month subscription fee, or you can do it for a one-time fee of $1,000 just because you watch this video. I'm going to leave both links to that down in the description of this video. Hope you enjoy and hope it helps you do better with your leads. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on your time zone. I'm just going to spotlight myself so everybody can see me, just depending on what kind of format you're watching this on, whether it is a phone, a tablet, a computer, whatever the case might be. I'm talking into a mic that's off to the side here. So if you guys could do me a favor, if you can hear me well, throw it in the chat, throw a thumbs up in the chat for me, or some kind of way to let me know if I'm coming through okay here. That would help me out a lot. Thank you. Thank you, guys. See the thumbs up there. That's perfect. Awesome. Okay. We're doing a little bit of a different kind of format here today. So we're going to be doing some whiteboard training with you guys, which I personally love doing. It's one of my favorite ways to actually teach and train. You can ask Bobby, who's on here, who's in my office. I love to do the whiteboard trainings. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of different subjects here today, all of which I'm passionate about, and that is calling your leads, making sales calls, and doing it in the most effective and efficient way possible. But also we're going to be talking about a Turning 65 presentation. I'll go through with you guys my Turning 65 presentation, which I've developed over years and years of doing God knows how many presentations over the years. Then we're also going to talk about running appointments and just some things, just some little tips and tricks that might help you run an appointment more effectively, more time effectively, and everything else in between. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to start with you guys today is making a sales call. So I wanted to start off with this because I think it's relevant. I think it's actually pretty important to kind of get this part of it out of the way, because you wouldn't believe how many agents I've worked with over the years, or how many people I've encountered that tell me the following, and maybe this sounds familiar to you. I don't like calling leads. How many people have heard that, right? I mean, I mean, it's a rhetorical question because most of your camera is off and I can't see you, but raise your hand just to yourself if you've heard people say, I don't like calling leads, or people don't pick up the phone, or whatever the case might be, right? I do better in person versus over the phone. Now, some of you might be more comfortable in person versus over the phone, and I'm not trying to dispute any of that. But in my opinion, in our business, there's two different ways that you can get business. And this kind of goes into a lot of what I talked about at the summit in my presentation on stage. There's kind of two different ways you can get business. Number one, you can call people and you can kind of seek them out and, call leads and things like that. The other thing you can do is you can try to get your phone to ring. However, getting your phone to ring is rather expensive. And trust me, I know we spend about probably $10,000 a month on leads, marketing, and advertising just to get our phone to ring. And we still need to call leads to kind of fill things right in from time to time, right? And so I believe that for most people, it might not be something that you enjoy. It might not be something that you like, but it's probably a good idea for you to probably take the mindset of trying to master something that you don't necessarily like. Okay. I think it's a necessity. And I think some people make it harder than it needs to be, and they get in their own way. Okay. So I'm going to start off today talking about the sales calls and the sales training. Okay. Another thing, let me know if you guys can see the board. Okay. Lighting's a little weird in this room I'm in, so I had to kind of do something a little different with the lighting. But if you guys can see the board, do me a favor, throw me a thumbs up, do me something, some kind of way of letting me know. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Andrea. Perfect. Okay. just making sure you guys can see what I'm writing so I don't waste my time writing. So we're going to start off with sales calls. And the main thing I wanted to talk about today, you guys, with sales calls is some things that I believe people do wrong and maybe some things that you can do to fix that, okay? When you're making a sales call, the first thing that I would give you advice on, and I'll do some kind of just examples for you guys in a second here, but the first thing I would give you guys advice on are two things. The first one is fast, speed. And what do I mean by that? Fast and speed means get to the point when you get on the phone. I am not a believer of getting on the phone with a lead or a prospective customer, unless it's somebody that you already know and they're tremendously warm, then it probably doesn't make too much of a difference. But you're calling a lead. Let's say you're calling a Facebook lead. You're calling a direct mail lead, somebody that is relatively cold in comparison to a referral or an inbound call or something like that, right? What you need to keep in mind is they get calls all the time, and they're getting more calls than just your call. And they are tired of getting calls for the most part. And it's important that you're fast, you're quick, and you're to the point on your phone call. You want to be quick, fast, and to the point with your sales calls, you guys, because they're getting calls from a lot of people other than you. And they're just getting tired of getting these phone calls, right? You guys probably get a bunch of calls yourself about different things. I know I do. Somehow my cell phone number is on some database somewhere and people are calling me. So what is important to do is don't get on the phone and say, hi, is this Miss Betty or this Miss Dorothy? And how's your day going today? Or how's the weather or whatever the case might be, right? Just cut all of that out because you only have so much time on the phone. I listen to phone calls all the time of agents, and they have an opening with a prospect. They'll be on the phone with them for 5 or 6 minutes, but they take too long to actually get to the point. So this is an example of kind of what I would do if it was me. And this is the script that we use internally to call leads. And the script has probably made me hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in commission over the years, calling leads from my own pen. So this script is going to be quick, fast, and to the point. And I think it works whether you're doing direct mail leads, whether you're doing Facebook leads. I think it works whether you're doing telemarketed leads. You just change up a couple of things, but the basic skeleton of it all is going to be sufficient. So the first thing I'm going to do is when I'm calling up Miss Dorothy, the phone's going to ring, right? It's going to go ring, 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 ring. She's going to answer. She's going to go, hello. I'm going to say, hi, is this Dorothy? I saw someone in the Facebook, in Medicare Gurus actually post something this morning about a couple of things. The first thing they said is if you're on the phone with somebody and they hang up, call them right back and be like, hey, I think we got disconnected. I actually teach that as well. I believe in that. If they say I'm not interested and hang up, then yes, don't call them back. You're wasting your time and theirs at that point. But if they just hang up, no questions asked, no words given, I'm a believer in calling them back because I've actually been able to make sales on the second call. And sometimes it does just get disconnected. Sometimes you don't just want to assume things. Maybe they're in a bad signal zone or something like that. The second part of what he said, I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but I don't know. I don't think it matters really too much. But he also said in his Facebook post in Medicare Gurus that never say, is this so-and-so? Say, Bob. So like, let's say you're calling Bob and you say, hi, hey, Bob. I'm not a big believer in that. I don't think it matters too much, but it seems like every time I've ever tried that in my career, I call and it's not really Bob, or it's Bob's brother or his wife or whatever, right? So what I always teach doing is I teach calling up and saying, hi, is this Bob? Yes, it's Bob. I say, hi, Bob, this is Christian. I'm getting back to you, Bob, on a reply card you sent back in the mail in the last couple of weeks requesting some additional information on Medicare benefits and Medicare plans here in the area. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions to determine if I can be of any service? Always, always, always pre-qualify your sales. It prevents you from wasting time and it prevents you from wasting their time as well. Not everybody that's interested is a good potential customer or client for you. I'm trying to go right into the fact find. I'm trying to get that out within probably the first 8 to 10 seconds of them picking up the phone. And you would be amazed at how often people are receptive to you asking questions because you're not asking for a lot from them, right? You're not asking for a commitment to a sale. You're not asking for personal information. You're not even asking to meet with them necessarily. You're just asking to ask them a couple of questions, and it's going to be fast and it's not going to take a lot of time. My experience has been when I call up with that script, and it's taken me years to kind of perfect it exactly the way that I like it, I would say a majority of people, probably over half, that pick up the phone are receptive to having the questions answered, and they're going to say yes. It might be a reluctant yes, like a sure or something like that, but a yes is a yes is a yes. And I'm trying to go right into the fact find from that phone call, right? I'm not a big believer of these super. I said that part really fast. Okay, I'll slow it down. Okay, I'll go through it again. This is how I would say it if I was actually on the phone with somebody, okay? So if I'm calling Bob, it rings. Bob answers. He says hello. I say, hi, is this Bob? Tonalities are very important when you're making sales calls. I'm going to come back to that in a second. I say, hi, is this Bob? He says, yes. I'm going to say, hi, Bob. This is Christian. I'm getting back to you on a reply card you sent back in the mail over the past couple of weeks, requesting some additional information on Medicare benefits and Medicare changes here in the area. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions to determine if I can be of any service? So number one, I'm getting right to the point, right? A lot of these people have been on the phone with some of these telemarketers that just don't know what they're doing, and they keep them on the phone for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and it just ends up being a complete waste of time. You're not going to be that time waster. You need to get it you need to get it out fast, but you also need to get your tones correct, right? So if you notice, when I get on the phone with Bob, I'm starting out the conversation with a high tone, an excited tone, an enthusiastic tone, because how many times have you gotten someone that's called you that you get on the phone with them and they're like, hello, is this Jill or is this Greg or Jason, whatever, right? And they just don't sound like they want to be there. They just sound like they'd rather be dead than talking to you. Right off the bat, that's going to turn me off, right? I'm not going to talk to them anyway. I'm a very busy person, as all of you are, but I'm 100 times less likely to talk to them if they don't start off enthusiastic, and they don't sound very welcoming. So I'm starting off the phone call with enthusiasm. I'm going to start off with a, hi, is this Bob? Hi, is this Bob? Excitement. When you're on the phone with somebody, you are missing out on a lot of types of communication that are not verbal, that you get when you're face-to-face. You're missing out on eye contact. You're missing out on hand gestures and enthusiastic hand gestures, right? Communication through that. You're missing out through smiles. You're missing out on all of this different types of communication that's actually not verbal. And so you have to make that up by emphasizing your words and your tones when you're on the phone with the prospect. So again, I'm going to go, hi, is this Bob? Yes. I'm going to say, hi, Bob. This is Christian. Some people will call up and they'll say, this is, Robert with such and such, Medicare Solutions or whatever the case might be. I don't believe in that, and I don't teach that. I don't think that's actually a good way to go about it. I'm going to keep it simple, straightforward. This is Christian. I'm getting back to you, Bob. This is a powerful statement. Some people don't understand why this is powerful, and I'll explain. I'm planting the seed in Bob's mind, or the prospective customer's mind, that they asked me for information. They asked me to get in touch with them. And in one way, shape, or form, they did, one way or another, right? They asked for my call. So I am getting back to them. I'm actually accommodating their wishes and their request. I'm getting back to you, Bob, on a request that you sent in the last couple of weeks through the mail with a postcard, requesting some information on Medicare changes here in the area and additional Medicare benefits. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions, Bob, to determine if I can be of any service? So every little piece of that script is by design. Now, if you guys would like a copy of this script in writing, do me a favor, shoot me an email or shoot Celeste an email when this is done, and we're happy to send it over to you in a Word document. So don't worry about having to memorize anything or anything like that. We're happy to send you the script if you like. But that script is going to be very, very powerful and very, very important on contacting your leads. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is contacting your leads and getting them actually on the phone, right? I hear from people all the time and they're like, how do I actually get people on the phone? People don't answer, right? Well, how many times do people say a lead is no good or I can't get anybody on the phone? And they call them once and never again. They call them twice and never again. If you're buying a batch of leads that you have to outbound call yourself, you're not going to have that much success unless you're calling them probably 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9 or 10 times, right? In my office, I try to teach everybody, call a lead about 8 times before you give up on it. But you should be doing more than just calling the lead. Studies show that usually you have to have about, I read an article last night actually about this in preparation for this training. And the article I was reading, and this was actually a higher number than I was anticipating. It said the average sale takes place on the 10th to 15th contact of the prospective customer. That's a lot, you guys. So imagine if you're just calling your leads 3 times, how many people you're not able to reach or get into contact with if you're not calling them. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily need to call them 10 to 15 times. I would recommend calling them about 8 times, and I would try different times of the day. I would try in the mornings, I would try in the evenings, I would try in the afternoons. I would mix it up because different people have different work schedules over the course of time. If you're using your CRMs and you're using automation, you have something put in place, you can actually automate that lead to where it's getting text messages, to where it's getting ringless voicemails, to where it's getting emails. And those are different kind of touch points, right? You guys all know I'm a big fan of DFY. We actually just got our automations up and running into it. I used to use ActiveCampaign. As of last year, now we're using DFY, and it's working really well for us so far. We're getting leads that text us back. Most of them are just like, leave me alone, but at least we got a response out of them, right? And when I was using ActiveCampaign, we're doing the same kind of strategy. We would have people that would actually text us back that had questions, specific questions in mind on their plan. I have this plan. What do you think about it? That we could never get them on the phone no matter how many times we called them, right? But they would answer a text message. And so having those automation platforms put into place is going to be really, really valuable for you. Even let's say you have 10 leads and you just send the email yourself. Let's say you have an email that you've pre-written, you copy and paste it in and put their name in. That's better than not sending the email at all, right? Same thing with the text messages. And so that's one thing, guys, is make sure that you're calling the leads enough, right? You don't want to give up on the leads so quickly. You want to make sure that you're touching them as often as you possibly can. Now, there is such a thing as wasting your time. And I think anything after 8 phone calls is probably wasting your time, in my opinion. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk with you guys about today is what kind of questions are we asking when we're fact finding our leads? So it depends on kind of what kind of lead I'm actually working. If I'm working a direct mail lead and maybe it's an LIS lead or a dual income lead or whatever the case might be, a dual eligible lead, I'm going to ask different questions than if it's a turn 65 lead, right? If it's a generic lead and I'm getting people of all different shapes and sizes, maybe during AEP, for example, I'm going to ask questions like, Bob, are you on Medicare now? Yes, you are. Perfect. Bob, do you have a supplement plan or a kind of an extra plan that you have that works with your Medicare, possibly through an insurance company? You do. Perfect. Do you happen to know if it's an Advantage plan or a Medicare supplement, Bob? You don't know? That's quite all right. Do you happen to know which insurance company it's with? Oh, it's with Humana. Do you pay a premium for that, Bob? No, you don't pay a premium for it? It's probably a Medicare Advantage plan. I can get there in the first 2 to 3 minutes of the phone call most of the time. And I can find out a lot of really valuable, really good information, really quick, fast, and in a hurry. And in today's society of instant gratification and short attention spans, because seniors have it too, guys. Seniors went through COVID. Seniors went through a situation where they couldn't leave their houses often. A lot of seniors have smartphones, right? You have to keep their attention and move through the conversation quickly, because there's a point in every phone call where you lost them, where they're just tired of talking to you. And you want to avoid that in every way that you possibly can. Okay. So let's talk about turning 65 presentations. Okay. Yes. Aiden asked a good question. Will all these questions be on the script? Yes, they will. Now the script I'm going to send that you guys are going to send to me are going to be just kind of like a generic lead, like maybe a direct mail lead. I would probably change the questions up a little bit if someone's turning 65. And the turning 65 questions won't be on there, but I'll go through with you guys real quickly kind of what I would ask if someone's turning 65. I would ask, first things first, I would confirm their birthday, even if I have it on the lead, because most of the time, not most of the time, but oftentimes the lead information is wrong on when their birthday actually is. So I'm going to ask, I see that your birthday is August 15th, Bob. Is that right? Do I have that right? Yes? Perfect. Are you working? Yes, you are. Okay, great. Do you have an employer plan? Do you have an employer plan through your active work right now? You do. Okay, perfect. Why do I want to know that? Well, obviously, right? I want to know if Bob has the option of staying on his employer plan or if he has to take Medicare at 65. I also am going to ask, Bob, are you drawing off Social Security? If he's working, probably not, but you never know, right? Are you drawing off Social Security, Bob? The reason why I'm asking that is because, as most of you probably know, if he is drawing off Social Security, he's automatically going to be enrolled in Medicare Part A and Part B. That helps me because then I know if Bob is going to get on Medicare, ends up wanting to get on Medicare, or has to get on Medicare, he's not going to have to apply online because he's automatically going to get his card in the mail if he's drawn off Social Security. Okay. So those are some of the questions I would ask. And it's going to change based on kind of the leads I'm going to work. But if it's a generic lead and I'm just getting all different kinds of people into that funnel, into that sales process, I'm probably going to go with just the questions that will actually be on the script that we'll send out to you guys for those of you that request it. Okay. So let's talk about, there's a lot of things I want to cover in this call today. And I feel like we always never have enough time. Maybe we should do these for 2 hours. I don't know. Maybe that's too long for you guys. Short attention spans, right? So I want to talk to you guys about my turning 65 presentation and why I do it the way I do. Now, we do a lot of different things in our office in terms of how we meet with clients. So we do some appointments over the phone. Some of them, we have clients come into the office. We will typically not go to the house. If I'm training somebody and we just need to get, some live action, I might go to a house just for the sake of training, but we typically do not go to houses anymore. We have prospects come into the office. They'll meet with us here in the office. And on top of that, we'll either do it over the phone if maybe they're too far away or maybe they don't want to come in, but we're not typically going to homes. If I'm sitting in person with somebody, I love to kind of draw out the presentation for turning 65. Now, years ago, I started doing a T-chart and I found that was the most effective way for me to do this. I've tried all different kinds of presentations with people. They seem to grasp it much better when you're explaining their options, because when you're meeting with someone that's turned 65, let's face it, you're explaining to them one of two options, really, right? You're explaining them the differences between Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage plans, the pros, the cons, and everything else in between, the costs. And you're trying to help them get a very clear 10,000 foot view understanding of what's going to be best for them, right? And a T-chart, the visualization of it seems to be the best way to go about it. And I was actually amazed by how often that I would talk to people that were sales leaders and legends in our industry. And they're like, yeah, that's what we do too. That's what we teach in our call center. Medicare Bob told me that last year. I went to Florida and actually saw his offices, and we were hanging out for probably the first 6 hours of my trip. And he told me the same thing. He's like, we just do a T-chart. There's nothing that's going to be more effective, right? Sometimes it's better to keep it simple. So T-chart for a turning 65 presentation. I'm going to do MedSup on this side. I'm going to do Medicare Advantage on this side. Okay. So with me, I'm almost always going to be starting on the Medicare supplement side. Okay. And the reason for that is because, to me, this is just my opinion, I think it takes longer to explain MedSup than Medicare Advantage to someone that knows nothing about Medicare. Maybe some of you feel differently if you present it a little bit differently, but I'm going to show you guys my wording, my terminology, and actually how I'm going to go through this with somebody. Okay. So if I'm talking to Bob and Bob's sitting over here, this is how I'm going to go about it. Okay. I'm going to say, okay, Bob. So with Medicare, when you get onto Medicare, everything you actually have to deal with centers around what's known as original Medicare, Bob. Original Medicare is going to be Part A and Part B that actually comes from the government. Okay, so those are the two parts of Medicare that actually come from the government. Everything else you hear about comes from insurance companies. So you have Part A and Part B. Now, what Part A and Part B do, Bob, and this is a line that's made me a lot of money over the years, and it's just helped people understand something in a way that maybe they would have a hard time with. This is how I explain Part A and Part B. I'd say, Bob, Part A and Part B can best be thought of as two pieces of a puzzle that work together to give you medical coverage. This is very, very important, I think, to word it this way, because it's going to just click in their mind, right? They both cover different things, but together, when you put them together, they cover medical bills. They both cover different aspects of medical bills, but when you put them together, they cover medical bills. I don't even go into Part A does hospital and Part B does medical, unless they ask, right? Sometimes I will if I just, if I'm feeling frisky that day. But most of the time, these days, I'm not even going to go into that because it's not really important, really. I mean, is it really that important that your client knows that Part A does hospital and Part B does medical, and then what that entails? They're not going to remember that, and there's only so much information that they can store in their minds. You want them to remember the important things, to me, that are actually going to impact them. Because whether they're on a Medicare supplement or whether they're on a Medicare Advantage plan, it's irrelevant. It's not good. They're not going to have to know what Part A does and what Part B does. All they know is they show their Medicare card, they show their supplement card, it gets paid, or they show their Medicare Advantage card and they have a copay, right? So some of you guys, and I've said this many, many times, and I'm going to say it for anybody that might have not heard me say it before. Some of you guys are so concerned with showing the prospect how knowledgeable that you are. And that's fine. And they're going to understand how knowledgeable you are, but simplify your process. You're going to have a much easier time not losing people in the weeds by doing so. They're not trying to be experts in this stuff like you are. They just need to know enough to make a decision. So Part A and Part B, right? I'm going to say, Bob, they fit like two pieces of a puzzle that work together to give you medical coverage. Part A typically comes with no premium. That's what you paid for over the course of your working life, right? FICA taxes, Social Security, Medicare. Medicare Part B, on the other hand, has a monthly premium that's about $170.10 a month. Now, if your income is, dramatically high, or maybe it's dramatically low for any reason, it can be different than that. But for most people, it's going to be the $170.10. I'm not going to say anything more than that, because if they are in a high or low income bracket, they're usually going to bring it up to me when I say that line right there. But 9 out of 10 people, they're not impacted with the difference with having an IRMA situation or they're on Medicaid. Most people aren't that. And so I don't need to explain all of that stuff to people that it's not relevant for. See, I'm trying to simplify it for what they actually need to know. But me saying that line right there, some people that are in dramatically high income brackets or low income brackets, sometimes that can be different. If that's the situation for somebody and they think they're in a high income bracket or they think they're in a low income bracket, they're going to ask me and they're going to bring it up, and then I can go into more detail about that specific part of it. So I'm going to say they cover medical bills, but Medicare doesn't cover 100% of medical bills, Bob. Medicare covers about 80% of medical bills. And Medicare doesn't cover things like prescription drugs, dental, vision, hearing. So those are the holes we're actually trying to fill when we're actually helping somebody with their Medicare. With Medicare, the 20% out of pocket on the medical has no max out of pocket. There's no stop loss, right? So there's no maximum to what the 20% could be that they actually charge you, Bob. So it's really important that we get that hole filled in particular, but they're all important to get filled. When you go with a Medicare supplement, you're actually picking up a secondary insurance through a private insurance company, and it is going to act as a secondary insurance on the medical bills, right? So it's going to pay after Medicare. It's going to supplement Medicare, hence the term Medicare supplement. Now, these plans, this is going to vary based on your state, but for my state, this is accurate. I'd say a good estimate of one of these plans, Bob, would probably be about $110 a month. It could be more, it could be less. It just depends on what kind of plan you actually want to go with. But the job of the Medicare supplement is to pay the 20% of the medical bills that Medicare leaves behind. The rule of thumb with a Medicare supplement, Bob, is if Medicare pays, it will pay. If Medicare doesn't pay, it won't pay. And because Medicare doesn't cover things like prescription drugs, dental, vision, hearing, neither does the Medicare supplement plan, Bob. When you go this route, Bob, what you're really looking at is you are picking different plans and picking different policies to fill each little area of coverage for you. So since Medicare doesn't cover the prescription drugs or the dental, and neither does your Medicare supplement, well, you have to pick up separate policies for both of those things. So enter Medicare Part D. D for drugs, Bob. Medicare Part D can best be thought of as D for drugs, right? Medicare Part D is prescription drug plans, pharmaceutical plans. And it's just little insurance policies that you pick up through insurance companies as well. And it's usually going to be 10, 15, 20, 30, maybe $40 a month in premium. It just depends on kind of what prescriptions you're actually taking. I'd say a good estimate, just for the sake of example, is going to be about $20. And of course, if you want dental, vision, hearing, that's a separate plan as well. Those probably are going to be about maybe $30 to $40. Maybe it can vary, give or take. I'm going to give a $30 estimate just for the sake of example on this one, Bob. So this is how I'm going to break down the Medicare supplement. I'm going to try to do it quicker. I'm stopping and pausing with you guys because I want to explain why I'm saying something the way I'm saying it. But if I'm actually doing this with the prospect or the client, my goal is to get through this whole part in maybe about 15 to 20 minutes, right? Now, the other thing I'm going to mention when I'm over here is I'm going to say the pros and cons, the good and the bad. So I'm going to say, in my opinion, Bob, there's some good and some bad to doing it this way, to setting up your Medicare this way. The positives are, between Medicare and your supplement plan, you're double covered. So you have incredibly good medical coverage. I would call it top shelf medical coverage. You're double covered. It's an 80-20 split. So depending on the company and depending on the plan you actually select, you could have potentially full medical coverage or very close to full medical coverage. It's the closest thing you can have to full medical coverage. Very little out of pocket, no copays, very little deductible, very little out of pocket in general. And so this is probably the best medical coverage that money can buy. The other thing, Bob, that's a positive is the Medicare supplement plan is going to have no networks. Most insurances have networks of hospitals and doctors, and you kind of got to make sure that you're staying within their network of providers. Well, with the Medicare supplement, Bob, that is not an issue, and that is not the case. A Medicare supplement plan has no network as long as the provider accepts Medicare First, original Medicare First. They will also take your supplement plan regardless of which insurance company that you go with. And nowadays, probably 98% of doctors nationwide accept Medicare, and it might be more, it might be less. It's something like that, right? 98% of doctors nationwide accept original Medicare, and that works the same across state lines. Works the same in all 50 states. You can pretty much use it anywhere in the country. And as long as they take Medicare, you're not going to have an issue with provider networks. And so those are the positives, Bob. Now, what are the negatives of going with a Medicare supplement? Well, the negatives are, for most people, it's a little confusing. You have to pick up 3, maybe 4 different plans that all do something different. They all have a different premium. They're all paid a different way. You have a different card for each one of them. And that can be a little overwhelming and a little confusing for the average person. It's also a higher monthly premium than over on this side, which we'll get to. And so you're probably looking at, and in Utah, these numbers are probably going to be pretty accurate. You're probably looking at about $350 a month, give or take, per person for everything in Utah, of course. And so it's a higher monthly premium than you have over here. And then I'll also throw this one in there. There's actually 2 other negatives that I wanted to mention, Bob. A Medicare supplement plan, let's just say it's $110 a month, like my example, right? Well, that's what it's going to be the first year. It will continue to go up in price every single year as you get older, and every single company does it. If there's a company that says they don't do it, my experience has been they're not telling the truth. Story for you guys. When I was living in Florida, Bankers Life would tell people they wouldn't go up in rate at all in their rates. And they were probably a good 35 to 40% more than most of the competition. And they would tell people that. And they'd say, we don't go up in price. Well, what happened is people would pay this extra price thinking over time, it'll be good for me because it won't go up in price, right? 12 months later, it would go up 10%, 11%, whatever the case might be. They would call the agent, and the agent wasn't with the company anymore. Bankers would throw their hands in the air and say, we don't take responsibility for that. That person's not with us anymore. We can't be responsible for what they said. And it was such a nasty situation. This was back in 2017. But sometimes I'll tell that story to clients if we're ahead on time, because I want to paint the picture to them that, hey, this is going to go up no matter who you go with. Some go up more than others. And me as your agent, me as your broker, I'm always looking at trends and different situations to try to help you find one that's going to go up as little as possible over a long period of time. But even a small rate increase is still a rate increase. So it's going to continuously get more expensive. The other thing that's a negative on this, Bob, is and I view this as a negative. Some of you might not, but I do. So I put this in this category. I'm going to say, Bob, when you get a Medicare supplement plan, so you're turning 65 right now. So you can get any kind of plan you want with no health questions, no underwriting. They have to accept you. It's a straight shot. But once you're outside of that window, let's say you go with a Medicare supplement plan and you want to change it down the road, or let's say you go with a Medicare Advantage plan and you want to go to a Medicare supplement later. Once you're outside of your new to Medicare window, let's say it's a few years from now, to get a Medicare supplement plan, you have to be able to pass health questions. You have to be able to go through underwriting. And if medically you can't qualify for that company's questionnaire or their qualifications, then they don't have to accept you and you might not be able to get one later. So I'm going to put that into that, right? Another thing I'll usually tell the prospects and clients is this, and I think it's accurate. I'm going to say, normally I can find one that will take you, but I can't promise it, right? If you have something very extreme or very chronic, you're not going to be able to find coverage with probably anybody. If you have cancer, kidney dialysis, right? Rheumatoid arthritis is a tough one, right? There's so many different situations. So that's what I'll tell them, but I'm not trying to present it in a way to where it makes it seem like they can never get it later, but I want it to be clear that they can get it now with no health questions. There's no guarantee of that ever again. And then I'll go, Bob, that's your positives and negatives of Medicare supplement plan. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions for me? I'll answer any questions he has, and then I'll move on to Medicare Advantage, right? So doing it this way and breaking it down is very, very effective with people because it gives them a really good visual and it really helps them understand that, hey, you have two options. Yeah, you hear about all these different plans and all these different million parts of Medicare, but at the end of the day, you have two options. I'm going to quote Medicare Bob on this, and some of you might have heard me say this on trainings in the past, but I borrowed this from him because I think it's really good. What he teaches his people in his call center to tell people is there's no bad answer. There's no bad decision on which way you're going to go. Both plans are actually really good. The coverage is really good. If you compare a Medicare Advantage plan benefit in most areas to an ACA plan, right, or my health insurance, or a lot of different kind of work insurances, it's usually better, right? So it's usually pretty good coverage. You don't have medical deductibles. You don't have a lot of things. So what he always tells people when I actually started borrowing it, because I think it's really good, is he says, it's good and better. There's no wrong decision, right? It's good and better. And that kind of helps the client feel at ease and making a decision that they're going to be covered pretty well no matter which way they go. Now, if there's something glaring in the client situation and it's one of those situations where it's like you can just tell that a sup would be better for them, let's say, then it's not a bad thing for you to nudge them in that direction. But outside of that, I'm not normally going to push people one way or the other. I'm going to try to educate, give them a really clear 10,000 foot view understanding, and have them make their own decision. And almost always they do. And I'll go whichever way they go. So if I'm doing Medicare Advantage, I know you guys have a million questions in the comments. I'm going to come back to them. Okay, I'm going to finish this part up. I want to talk a little bit about appointments, but I won't take long on that. Okay. So Medicare Advantage plans, right? You have Part A and B, just like over here. You still pay the Medicare Part B premium of about $170.10 a month. That part doesn't change. But instead of running your Medicare through the government, you actually run your Medicare through a private insurance company. Think about Humana, Aetna, United Healthcare. And this private insurance company, you can think of it best as they actually are going to take over the responsibility of administering your benefits. They're administering your Medicare for the government. They're taking over the responsibility of paying your claims. And that takes a big burden off of Medicare's shoulders, right? Because Medicare doesn't have to pay 80% towards your bills anymore, towards your claims. So in exchange, Medicare is going to fund this insurance company every month to take care of you. And they get a pretty good amount of funding. The reason for this, Bob, well, maybe not the reason for this, but because of this, Bob, Medicare Advantage plans are very low cost. In fact, in my area, and here in Salt Lake City, this is the case. It might not be in yours. probably about 75% of the plans in this area have no monthly premium. And that's why you see all those advertisements for no premium. That's where it comes from. And some plans do have a premium. Some are $20 a month, $30, $40 a month. I'm going to say anywhere between 0 to 40, depending on what you need. But it's a very low cost plan. Now, the Medicare Advantage plan, Bob, is going to be an all-inclusive plan. It's going to be all-in-one plan. It's going to be more similar to probably any insurance you've had throughout your working life. So you're going to have medical coverage included, prescription drug coverage, dental, vision, hearing in a lot of plans. So it's an all-in-one plan, and a Medicare Advantage plan is known to actually cover a much wider variety of things than original Medicare and a supplement will. Now, the medical coverage on a Medicare Advantage plan, Bob, is going to look like this. It's not going to be full coverage like the supplement plan. It's going to have more out of pocket, but it doesn't have any large deductibles. And usually what I'll ask them is, like, let's say they're on a work plan. I'm going to say, so Bob, your work plan now, does it have a deductible? Every single time they say yes. Yes, it does. How much is it? $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000? It's $4,000. And that deductible needs to be met before your plan will pay anything substantially. Is that right? Yes? Perfect. Medicare Advantage plans typically don't have medical deductibles. And if they do, we don't sell them, hardly ever. But Medicare Advantage plans don't have medical deductibles. What they have is they have copays, right? So they have a copay each time you use it, and that contributes towards a maximum out of pocket, which is a stop loss for you. It's not a deductible. People always get them mixed up, but this max out of pocket is going to be the most that you can be responsible for over the calendar year in medical bills. In Utah, we're probably looking at it between a $4,000 and $6,000 max out of pocket. The copays look something like this, Bob. You're probably looking at $5 for a primary care doctor visit, if not zero. Probably looking at $30 to $40 for a specialist visit, $90 for an emergency room visit. If you spend the night in the hospital, you're probably looking at $300 to $350 per night for the first 4 or 5 nights. And after that, they cover you 100%. And I'm breaking this down like this and kind of just walking through some of the copays just in generalities, right? I'm not talking about any specific plan. I'm just kind of talking generalities. I'm going to say, so it's good medical coverage. It's better medical coverage than original Medicare would be on its own, but it's not as good as a Medicare supplement, but it's also much less expensive. Now I'm going to go over the positives and the negatives of a Medicare Advantage plan. The positives are obvious. It's very cheap. It's very inexpensive. And so you're looking at essentially the Medicare Part B premium, and that's it in most cases, or maybe $200 a month, worst case scenario. Very low cost, and people like cheap, people like no premium. It also is simple. You have one card that does everything for you. You have your Medicare Advantage card, and you can show that at the pharmacy. You can show that at the doctor. You can show that at the dentist with most plans. Some plans send you a separate dental card. And the other thing that's a positive is Medicare Advantage plans cover a lot of different things that Medicare doesn't, like over-the-counter item benefits. What that is, Bob, is it's a benefit that helps pay for things like aspirin, ibuprofen, fish oil, Band-Aids, vitamins, things like that. It gives you a gym membership. Some Medicare supplements do, but not all. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through that right now. The negatives are obvious. The negatives we all know. There's networks, there's restrictions, there's referrals. And if you get really sick or you have a lot of health problems and you use it a lot, the out-of-pocket can eat up your savings in the premium very quickly, right? We all know this. I'm not going to waste too much time covering that. So that's my Turn 65 presentation. And 99 people out of 100 that sit here in the office and will watch me do this will have a pretty clear understanding of what they want to do and which direction they want to go. And it makes it easier for me, right? Because they know their medical history better than I ever can. And they know what they prefer more than I ever can. I can do this same presentation for 100 people, and 50 people will see the Medicare supplement, or maybe 30 people will see the Medicare supplement and say, I want that. That's clearly the best option. Why wouldn't anyone go with that? Everybody else will see the Medicare Advantage and think the same thing. People are going to perceive something in their own way, through their own eyes, through their own light. And so I'm not a big believer in just in pushing people towards one plan or the other. I'm going to try to go where they go and try to help them find what they're going to prefer the most. That's our business model. And it's been very, very effective and very, very successful for us. So I want to talk about real quickly, just for a few minutes, about appointments And I'll talk about going to houses too, if you guys want to. I went to houses for 6 years exclusively, so I know a thing or two about going to houses. If you're going to a house, some people will say, call me beforehand. If you're going to one house and it's an hour away and you're going just for that one appointment and they say, call me beforehand, call beforehand. But if they're just around the corner, they're 5-10 minutes away from you and they say, call beforehand, I usually don't. I'll just go. And the reason is because if I call beforehand, it gives them a way to get out of the appointment, right? It gives them a very easy and very lightly. It's not a very uncomfortable way for them to get out of the appointment, right? And some people say, well, I thought you were going to call beforehand. I was like, well, I tried, maybe I dialed the wrong number. I don't know, right? I'm just going to go. And it's very hard for them to turn you away at the door, right? That might sound a little aggressive, maybe a little rude, but I think you want to get into as many houses as possible, in my opinion. The other thing that I would say when it comes to running appointments, and I'm going to say one more thing on this, and then I'm going to get to your guys' questions because I want to make sure that we have time to answer every single one of them. And I hope you guys like this kind of content, by the way. I love doing the whiteboard training. So if you guys like this kind of video, this kind of training, let me know about it because we'll do more of them if you guys like it. Next week, we'll have Justin Brock on. That's the plan. But the week after, we'll try to do a training similar to this on the whiteboard if you guys enjoy this kind of content. The other thing I would say when it comes to doing an appointment is, in my opinion, you guys, I like doing appointments in my office or over the phone because I have more control over the conversation. If I'm going to a house, they have the option of having their TV on, right? Or they have the option of, showing me all their trinkets and things like that. It's usually going to be a much longer appointment, drawn out appointment. When you're going to someone's house, you have to not be rude, but you have to control the conversation because you're a busy person and you have things to do. Direct it back, right? I kind of relate it to the Jordan Belfort straight line approach, right? Not that I'm the biggest fan of Jordan Belfort, but I think he teaches some good things. If you are, and there's a lot of things he teaches about his straight line system. This is just one really small element of it, and I've gotten a lot out of it. So let's say like your appointment, like your start of your appointment is here, and the sale is right here, right? If you're going down the line with them and they try to go off into outer space, right? They're trying to go everywhere except for where you want them to go. You have to direct it back to the beginning and start over. And this is if they're confused, if something like that. But on the same point, if they're just trying to go off into outer space and talk about whatever they want to talk about, their log cabin they grew up in, whatever the case might be, you have to pick your point and be like, that's actually amazing, Bob. That's actually amazing, Judy. Anyway, about this plan, be assertive, assert yourself in there. I've seen people that will, and then get them back on track. I've seen people that just don't have the courage to do this and to take control and to be assertive, and they'll be in a house for 3 or 4 hours because they can't take control of the appointment. You can take control of the appointment without being rude, without being mean. You just guide it back to where it needs to go. Because if you don't, they'll talk to you all day if you let them. Some of these people will. Some of these people are lonely. And maybe you want to sit with them for that long. Maybe you don't have a lot on your calendar, but to be effective as a salesperson comes through numbers. It comes through law of large numbers. It comes through volume. And you need to be in as many appointments and as many phone calls as you possibly can. All right, guys. So I want time to answer your questions. So I'm going to jump into the chat here and see what you guys got for me. Okay. Now, some of the questions I might have already answered. I was trying to look at the chat as we went here. Okay. Okay, here's a good question. From Adrian, do you ever have someone on a Zoom call? If so, do you also do this presentation? Occasionally, we'll get people that will request a Zoom call. I'm never trying to initiate the Zoom call. And the main reason is because you wouldn't believe how many people I've been sitting there trying to walk them through how to get into a Zoom meeting and they just can't figure it out. I find it's more, if I'm calling a lead and it's cold, I think adding the extra step of getting them onto the Zoom actually hurts me more than it helps me. So if I'm just talking over the phone, I'm going to do a very brief explanation of this just over the phone. And that seems to be just as effective. So I will do it if they ask me to do it, but I'm not usually trying to do it, if that makes sense. I feel like it just adds an extra step. Okay. If they're older and want a med sup, how do we know if they will be accepted based on their health? Do we have info as to what certain companies will accept? Yeah. So there's a couple things here. The way that we do it is pretty simple. So if I were you, I would go on to each carrier portal for each contract you have, and I would download their Medicare supplement application and have it on your desktop. Because on the Medicare supplement application, there's a part of it in there that's the health questions section. And you can see what actual health questions they're actually accepting. A lot of carriers will also have what's known as an underwriting guide. And an underwriting guide will have a list of all prescriptions that if they're taking that prescription, it's an automatic decline. So that's something you can check on too, right? Like if they take, you can get a list of their prescriptions and check the underwriting guide with the carrier. And that can kind of help a little bit too. But the health questions are on the actual application. So I download a PDF copy from each portal, which you can do with Mutual, with United, with Humana, with all these. So that way you have it available, and that way you can see their health questions. There's also a service called Insurance Toolkits. We don't use it. I don't endorse it. I don't know much about it, but from my understanding, it kind of automates some of this for you guys, and you can kind of see it all in one place. They've never approached me about marketing it with me, which I think that's a mistake, but I don't know. They just got a free shout out though. But I don't think you need it. We don't use it. It costs money, of course. What about COPD or dementia? Are clients with these illnesses unable to switch to med sup plans? Good question. So COPD, there are some companies that might be lighter on it, but from my experience, usually every company will either decline COPD or they'll rate it up. Like United Healthcare has like their level 2 rate in a lot of markets, to where they'll have like a list of health questions that will determine eligibility. And they'll have another list of health questions that determine if they get their regular price or they get a high price. And the rated up price is ridiculously high in comparison to the regular price. And it kind of just defeats the purpose oftentimes. Sometimes it's like 3 times as much as the normal price. Now, when it comes to dementia, if someone has dementia, you probably shouldn't enroll them, even if they want to. You should probably have a power of attorney to do it with you, because you can just you can get yourself in trouble real fast, right? Like they're likely not deemed by the state as competent to make their own decisions like that. So I would probably try to bring in a family member or a power of attorney in that situation if they have dementia. But when it comes to health questions, I think every company asks about it. At the very least, it will rate them up. So why would someone get a med sup over an MA plan? No out of pocket, ease of use, freedom, right? Like they can, if they travel, let's say they travel 8 months out of the year and they go all over the place. You can use it anywhere. There's no networks. And you have very, very little out of pocket. You have essentially, no copays. Like the Plan G is a $233 one time a year deductible that it doesn't cover. And outside of that, you have full medical coverage. So it's really good medical. It would be the reasoning. Some people like that. Some people like predictability. Some people like to be able to predict what kind of coverage they're going to have. Thanks, Andrea. I appreciate that. Thanks, Andrea. And I'm glad to hear it. Kim, more whiteboard. Thanks, Kim. You got it. You guys like the whiteboard? We'll keep doing more trainings like this. I like this kind of training too. On average, how long does a prescription take? A prescription drug plan or a comparison? Is that what you mean? A comparison will probably take 10 minutes. Depends on how many drugs they take too. You can run a prescription comparison on Medicare.gov in like 2 minutes if they have like lisinopril and omeprazole and that's it, right? They take 2 generics or something. But if someone comes in and they have a list of 25 drugs, that will take you maybe a little bit longer. So a lot of it just depends on how many drugs they're actually taking and how many you have to compare. The enrollments, once you know what plan you're going to do, if you have like Medicare Center or Sunfire or Connecture, you can do it easy, really quickly, very fast. You can do the scope and everything through there. When going to hospital or doctor, do you recommend they show their MedSup card as well as the Medicare card? I recommend showing both. Now, from time to time, we get calls. We actually got one about 2 weeks ago. Someone called into my office to where they had what did they have? They had a Blue Cross Plan G, and the hospital they were going to was telling them that they're out of network and they don't take Blue Cross. So you get that sometimes. Most of the time you don't, but you still get that sometimes because the billing people don't know the difference between Medicare Advantage and MedSup. They have no idea. They're just clueless. There's nothing here. And so what I typically would say in that situation is show the cards together. But if they run into a situation like that, they can just show the Medicare card only. And the way that the billing actually works for Medicare supplements, if any of you guys don't know this, is the doctor or the hospital bills Medicare. Medicare then sends the remainder of the claim over to the supplement company. They keep on track on file who the supplement company is, and then they send the rest of the claim over in that direction. So the doctor's office a lot of times doesn't even bill the MedSup, but it's good a lot of times to show the card because then they can put it in the claim notes. It just makes it easier for Medicare. But if they're running into a situation where they're saying they won't take it, I tell my clients in that situation to take their supplement card, put it in their pocket, and show their Medicare card only. The claim will get paid and the doctor's office will never know. Kind of like you're having to trick them to get them to be paid. Yes. Yeah, Donna, I totally agree with what you said. Get familiar with 3 to 4 MedSup applications and get their underwriting. Anywhere in the country or in the world? For MedSup, it's anywhere in the country. They have most MedSup plans, not all, most MedSup plans have foreign travel, but it's limited. It covers like a lifetime of up to $50,000 lifetime, and it pays 80% usually. So anywhere in the country, not anywhere in the world. Yeah, I get it on that, Jill. Like the only reason why I even recommend to them to show the Medicare supplement card is because I find if Medicare needs to kick it over to the supplement and there's no information in the claim on who the supplement is, it takes it way longer to get paid. It just slows the process down. So it will get paid, but it might take 2 months longer. That's the only thing about it. So it's better if they can show it together and they don't get any pushback. And truth be told, I'd say probably it's not like it's every day we get a call like that, but we probably do get 2 a month from clients that have MedSups that are being turned away because they're out of network. So it can be a problem. Do you educate the prospect and present the particular plans all in the same meeting? I try to. If it depends on the person. Like if someone comes in and they're 5 months away and they don't have a Medicare card, they don't have a Medicare number, I'm just going to probably do this presentation I did for you guys, and I'm not going to go any deeper. I'm going to show them how to apply. I have a tutorial video I made on YouTube that shows people actually step-by-step how to apply for Medicare Online. I'll send them that video. I don't help people anymore do it. I send them my video and I say, you do it. Because there's a lot of liability. Like if you do something wrong or something, if you're helping them, it's just not worth it. But yeah, I mean, I usually, if they have their Medicare card and they can make a decision right then and there, I'll try to do it all in one appointment if I can. If I can do one appointment and make the sale, I'd rather do that than do multiple, but just depends. Like, so I'll give you an example. Stormy had an appointment come in last week. I think it was last week, maybe it's 2 weeks ago. And the lady told her on the phone, she had her Medicare card and she was like, She told Stormy exactly what she wanted. She actually was pretty knowledgeable about Advantage plans and Medicare supplements too. She had done a bit of research. She said, I'm not making a decision today. I'll come into the office today, but I'm not making a decision today. And Stormy told me that she wanted me to sit in on it with her because it was a situation that she wasn't super comfortable with. So I said, sure. I'm like, I'll run the appointment with you. And she's like, she said she's not going to buy today. I'm like, you know how many times people have told me that over the years? Guess what? She bought that day. So I'll try to do it all in one appointment if I can. I don't care if they say I'm not buying today. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's great. In one ear, out the other. I'm going to try to get the app. Which I asked, when I asked about dementia, I meant what if our client is diagnosed with dementia after they have their meds up and they're shopping for a better rate? I don't think so. I can't think of any companies that would take somebody that has dementia, Alzheimer's, anything like that. If they have like an actual diagnosis on file, maybe there's a company like a, backwater company that I'm not thinking of that somebody might think of, but I think it'd be very difficult. I would probably recommend they just stay with it and bite the bullet. How often do you find that you make a sale in the first appointment? I talk to so many different people. Like I'll talk to people sometimes that are 6 months out and they just can't buy that day. So if I had to put a number on it, I'd say, I don't know, I'd say maybe 40% of the time I'll make the sale in the first appointment because there's just so many circumstances that prevent them from buying the first time, right? If they actually have their Medicare card, I'd say it'd be more like 80% if I have an appointment with them. It's much higher if they can actually buy that day, if we have their Medicare number. And if it's an appointment, right? I'm not talking about leads. I'm talking about actually people that I'm meeting with an appointment. If you're going to meet with someone in person, do you do any fact finding while scheduling, like asking if they have already Medicare? Yes. So we try to do that. So like, let's say we have someone that calls in, it's a referral or something. My staff has been trained, like Carrie, Celeste, like that. We've trained them to ask how they heard about us. I want to know how everybody heard about us. That is really important to me. I want to know what's working, what's not working, that kind of thing. The other thing I try to get them to find out is like if they already have their Medicare card, if they already have a plan. Like I try to get them to get some information about this particular situation. That's the long-term goal. We kind of want to know a little bit about going in if we can. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. Are you selling to those without Medicare number for PDP and Medicare Advantage? What do you mean, Jill? Like, are we selling them a Meds Up? Or because we really can't write them up if they don't have Medicare number. Oh, are we selling those people? No, we're usually what I'll do is like if somebody if we get in touch with somebody and they are 6 months out, I'll talk to them. I'll meet with them if they want to, and I'll give them a general presentation. The reason I'll do that is because if I put them off and say, no, I can't do anything for you now, there's a chance another agent will get in there and talk to them when I wouldn't, right? So I'm going to try to talk to them right away, and I'm going to build that trust and that connection. That way, when they get closer, they're almost guaranteed to go with me. So that's why. But yeah, we're selling those, but usually it's later. Like it's like a gradual process. All right, guys. I kept you guys longer than I said I would, but I enjoyed this training, and thank you guys for being here. Like I said, next week we are planning to have Justin Brock on, Medicare Guru himself. So if you guys have any questions for Justin, send me a message over. We'll see if we can fit them into the criteria. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed this training. We'll do more whiteboard trainings like this. I like these kind of trainings. And hope you guys have a great week and a great weekend, and make lots of sales, make lots of money, write lots of apps, help lots of people. We'll see you guys next week, okay? And thanks for being here, and thanks for staying late with me. See you guys. See you next week.